Chapter 3. Whiteout.
The temperature in the home has dropped quickly, and Frank lets out a shiver while heading over to the fireplace. Half-burned logs already linger in the pit, making it easier to relight. Soon fire crackles to life as the shack brightens in response to the dancing of the flames. He takes a moment to relax next to the fire, warming his hands near the comforting heat. He groans as he stands up, sore from the work he had done earlier. He stretches and yawns as the wind from the storm howls outside. The door creaks and the windows clatter loosely. He built the cabin many years ago and wasn't much of a carpenter. The loose ricketiness is apparent in its poor construction, but he was nonetheless proud of his work and the dwelling he had built for himself. He heads over to one of the windows, looking out into the snow blowing forcefully outside. Cool air radiates off of the window and tickles his nose while he peers into the chaos. The darkness outside has deepened to whiteout conditions as the clouds have completely blocked out the sun. A feeling of seclusion and turmoil sweeps over him. He pulls away from the window in an attempt not to fret. He thinks about town as he heads into the kitchen. Fort Lodgins is far away and difficult to get to in the best of conditions. If for some reason he had an emergency or ran out of supplies, he would be unable to make it there. Though the small town is more of a ghost town at this point and doesn't carry much as far as supplies. There are only 2 general stores and a gas station. The only supplies he gets from town are batteries, fuel for lanterns, canned and dry food, and toiletries. Anything else the forest supplies for him. As he moseys into the kitchen, he decides to grab a snack, retrieving a small bag of deer jerky from a cupboard near the sink. He happily chews on the jerky while getting out some food for Rex. He pours the food into Rex's bowl, causing Rex to bolt into the kitchen, nearly knocking over his food dish. "Whoa! Easy, boy. Slow down. You're not going to starve," he says to Rex with a cheerful smile. Frank and Rex jump after being startled by a loud, thunderous boom on the roof. "What was that?" he exclaims in alarm. Rex moves around nervously and continues to avoid eating his food while he apprehensively looks at the ceiling. Frank waits there, trying to identify what made the sound. After a moment of silence, he decides to check outside by looking out one of the windows. All he can make out are the normal placements of equipment outside he uses to garden or craft. Nothing out of the ordinary. A second thunderous boom from the roof rattles the window panes, and he jumps back from the window. "Jeez!" he yells fearfully. Rex whimpers and rushes under Frank's bed. Frank continues slowly prowling around the room, glancing out the windows, trying to pinpoint the cause of the commotion. He pauses in silence again, listening for signs of an intruder. Maybe an animal, he wonders in an uneasy curiosity. Sharp thudding footsteps can be heard bounding across the length of the roof, south to north. A moment later, the sound of a dampened thump is heard outside one of the windows. He hurries to the window, trying to catch a glimpse of whatever it is. He squints through the sweeping snowflakes, barely making out a large silhouette and movement of a creature heading away into the snowy field. He says in surprise, "What was that?" Chapter 4. Strange Events. Unable to shake the uneasy feeling Frank got earlier with the creature on the roof, he attempts to distract himself by reading one of the 3 books he owns. They belonged to his sister before she died in the avalanche. He's read them many times before, but enjoys them well enough. They help remind him of his sister, and Fort Lodgins doesn't have any books to be bought. He sits in his comfy, tattered reading chair in front of the fire and flips a page to the book he is currently reading, called Cargo Space, a science fiction horror. The dripping water resonating in the metal buckets can be heard, mixed with the harsh yet calming thrall of the howling wind. White swirls can be seen through the windows, illuminated by the fire and lantern light flickering within the dwelling. As he continues to read, he can't help but get the sensation that he is being watched. He looks up from his book and moves his eyes across the windows of the shanty, searching for an unknown observer. He laughs to himself about his paranoia and pets Rex's tummy as he lays at Frank's feet. Rex looks up from his nap at the welcome attention and scoots closer to Frank. Frank continues the belly rub and petting until his hand cramps up and he returns to reading the book. A blur movement out of the corner of his eye draws his attention to one of the windows again. There is a smudge on the glass in the shape of a large handprint, fading slightly as the seconds tick by. He slowly sets the book down as he stands up. The smudge fades completely in the freezing wind as he approaches the window again. He peers out, and around the house, looking for any signs of a person who may have been trapped out in the blizzard. There are no footprints below the window or anywhere in the lantern-lit snow, as he is left wondering if his imagination got the better of him. He makes his way over to the door and listens for signs of activity. There is nothing but the continuing barrage of the wind against the cabin walls. The door creaks loudly as he carefully opens it. Rex looks up to see what Frank is doing, but doesn't leave the warmth of the fire. Frank leans out of the door and looks around the area, noticing nothing out of the ordinary. "Is there anybody out there?" he asks into the darkness. "Is anybody there?" he asks louder, trying to project his voice out into the snowy abyss. There is no response, and he feels silly for entertaining the idea of someone creeping around his house during a blizzard. The cold air continues rushing inside the building, causing the lanterns to flicker as if threatening to be snuffed out from the force of the wind. He steps back, closing the door snugly, as he turns to glance at Rex, who is staring at him. "Nobody's there," he says, before letting out an awkward laugh. "It seems like this blizzard has me losing my mind," he says as he saunters over to his reading chair again. Before he sits down, the sound of clear, solid knocks rap at the cabin door. He freezes in fear and confusion. "What in the world is going on?" he mumbles to himself. Rex growls slightly, not knowing if he should charge the door or hide. Frank grabs an iron poker located next to the fire and slowly approaches the door apprehensively. 3 more sharp knocks impact the door, and he raises the iron poker, poised to strike. With his free left hand, he reaches for the doorknob and turns it quietly. A moment later, he flings the door wide open, but nobody's there. Bewildered, he scans the ground for footprints or tracks, but doesn't find any signs of a visitor.